few weeks ago, we did a massive compact car comparison, and these were the top two finishers.
It wasn't really that surprising that the Civic won. We always had an inkling that it would because it's just so darn good. But we were really surprised at just how well Hyundai's Elantra Hybrid finished. So we're going to go a little more in depth with both of them right here.
We got the two big H's in a hybrid head-to-head. We'll get you back to the hybrid sedan comparison in a second, but let's take a moment to talk about protecting your car. Custom made for an exact fit, WeatherTech offers complete protection for your vehicle's interior, especially family cars like these. There's the original WeatherTech floor liner and the new floor liner HP made from a more flexible material. Both work with your OE floor mat clips and protect up the sides of your footwell, plus the floor liner HP comes with these spikes for even better grip. And let's not forget the cargo liner for trunks and hatchbacks, which is great to protect your vehicle from everything you might need to carry in your brand new car. All WeatherTech products come with a lifetime guarantee. You can order online at WeatherTech.ca. Shipping is free anywhere in Canada, or for those who are local, they can visit our retail showroom at 1164 Walker's Line in Burlington and get their order same day.
Honda's eCVT does a really good job of both blending or switching between the power sources too, with very little of that elastic rubber band feeling that we used to get in earlier versions of Honda's hybrid system. It's also just properly quick. It's responsive and it has so much torque that this just feels way more than enough for an everyday car. It actually basically just feels like a bigger engine. It doesn't necessarily give off super hybrid vibes, it's just you have a lot more displacement now. Now don't let the numbers fool you, the Elantra is not as far down on power as it might seem. Sure, it only has 139 horsepower, but it has 195 pound-feet of torque. Also, advantage for the Hyundai, it is lugging around about 200 pounds fewer than the Civic. Also, that 6-speed auto is its secret weapon. Sure, it isn't quite as responsive as something like a CVT or eCVT, but it does respond pretty darn quickly, and there's very little jerkiness or even clear signs of any handoff between the power sources or the blending of them. Plus, with regular shift points, it just feels a little more grown up than a drony CVT. It helps make a compact, affordable car just feel a little bit more premium. Fuel economy goes to the Hyundai, at least officially. So according to the EPA, this thing will score 49 miles per gallon in the city and 52 miles per gallon on the highway, which are the equivalents of 4.8 and 4.5 liters per 100 kilometers. On our drive loop in the Mega comparison, which included a little bit of everything, the Hyundai matched that highway rating too. But so did the Civic. Now officially, the Civic is a little thirstier. It has a rating of 50 miles per gallon in the city, but only 47 miles per gallon on the highway, which are the equivalents of 4.7 and 5.1 liters per 100 kilometer. However, like I just said, it matched the Hyundai on our test loop. We assume it's because the Honda just doesn't have to work as hard. Also, based on previous time with this powertrain, it's pretty easy to beat those figures. I took the Civic home for a night and did just that. However, the last time I drove a Hyundai Elantra Hybrid, it was the same story. Needless to say, you're going to be saving a lot of money not buying gas. The Civic rides better than some premium cars. It is seriously impressive with how well damped and just big car stable this thing is. It sails over bumps, and you don't get a lot of noise of the suspension doing its thing, making its way into the cabin. In fact, you don't get a lot of noise coming into the cabin, period. That's not to say that the Civic can't also let its hair down. You get the feeling that when the engineers were asked whether they wanted to make this generation sporty or comfortable, they said yes. Good consistent steering means that the Civic is actually genuinely fun to pitch down the nearest back road, and it keeps the driver in the conversation. All that torque makes it a low-key rocket too. Now you can pull on the paddles behind the wheel, but they're not going to change gears or pretend to simulate gear ratios either. They'll just deal with the regenerative braking. You can select a few different levels, all of them are pretty light, but it kind of gives you that added decelerative feel of a manual, right? The Elantra does not have the breadth of abilities of the Civic. But as much as I enjoy the driving dynamics of this Honda, I recognize that most people shopping in this segment are looking for something that is predictable, reliable, and comfortable. And the Elantra is all of those things. It just feels light. That is the overriding term. It's a lighter curb weight. It translates to lighter steering. It feels more compact even though it isn't. While the Elantra does have a sport drive mode selector, I wouldn't recommend it. It just feels against the character of the car. It also does not have paddles to adjust the regenerative braking, even though newer Hyundai models do. Now, Honda debuted this generation of Civic 4 years ago, and we all thought it was a very, very conservative design, a far cry from the fractal-like Elantra. The flip side is that all these years later, the Civic has arguably aged better. Honda gave it the lightest of facelifts this year with a new grille and a front lower air intake that juts out a little bit more. It's a bit fussy to my eyes and weirdly looks kind of like a BMW 3 Series. The overall shape emphasizes the size of the Honda though. It's big in all directions. I like that. The big glass house gives a sense of space. It improves sightlines and it makes this look a little bit more like the classic Civics of the 90s. Fun fact, I was on the first drive launch of both of these vehicles when these generations launched. Now when it was new, the Elantra was a shock. It was such a different design language that we didn't really know what to expect. Now over the years, I've grown to like it, but Mike is a little less enthused. I think Hyundai is now even trying to walk it back because for the facelift last year, the Elantra gained a stylistically safer front-end design. Now, to Hyundai's credit, back when this overall model first launched in 2020, rear light bars weren't quite as ubiquitous as they are now, so the Elantra was ahead of the curve there. I also like that this model rides on those 17-inch alloys. It just gives the whole car a sense of being a little more actually compact, especially compared to the Civic. The weird thing though is that if you actually bust out the measuring tape, this is bigger in every direction, or it's the same height. That's impressive. The cabins tell a similar tale. The Civic's is a little more restrained and conservative. The Hyundai is expressive and dramatic. Now I'm sitting here in the Civic, and I think it was the right choice for Honda when it debuted this generation a few years ago. And I mean, obviously Honda thinks that too, because this basic design language has spread across the entire lineup at this point. You have this wonderfully wide dashboard that really shows off, well, yeah, the width of this cabin. Honda carves out space in cars in a way that I just can't comprehend. And on more than a few occasions, we've asked ourselves, do you even really need an Accord anymore? I like the mesh across the vents. It's a nice classy touch, and you have these super easy to understand and nicely clicky little adjusters. Of course, if I'm saying clicky, I feel contractually obligated to talk about the dials for the climate controls. They're knurled, and it's just really nice to play with them. There's a good use of materials and textures. There is some piano black, but luckily it is kept in a place where you're not going to touch it very often, so you're not going to muck it up. The texture down here on the center console is interesting, and it also hides dirt and scratches pretty well, so it's practical. There's also a noticeable advantage in terms of material quality in the Honda. This goes some way to explaining its higher price tag. You have really smooth, nice leather on the steering wheel, and a lot of soft touch parts, say, down on the doors. Now, Mike really likes the styling of the Elantra's interior, and I get it. It has a distinct cockpit-like vibe. There are a lot more materials and colors in that, but I think that is an advantage for the Hyundai because it just breathes a little bit of life into the cabin. Sure, the wool-ish material only looks like wool on the door panels and you probably don't want to touch it. But again, it's visually interesting. And Hyundai is one of the leaders in the market as far as I'm concerned in terms of playing with textures. The most divisive aspect of the Elantra's cabin, almost literally, is the bar that goes down the center console. Now, I know some people really don't like it. I do. I think it is a great little touch that makes the Elantra feel special, although don't touch it. Don't wrap your hand around it as a driver because you're going to touch the seam on the far side and that just feels cheap.
Overall, the Elantra is the better equipped vehicle of the two, with features like ventilated seats, a 360-degree camera, and a larger, more configurable infotainment system. Now the Civic does counter. It has a power passenger seat and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Yes, the Elantra in 2025 still does not have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and if you want to plug it in, you need an old school USB-A, yes, the big rectangular one, and not the more modern oval USB-C. But back to the infotainment systems for a second. The Civic uses Honda's latest and greatest infotainment software, but the actual physical screen and buttons and the software itself all look a little dated. The Hyundai screen and software looks more modern and it has some great features not found in the Civic, like the split screen capability. I also found it was easier to configure and personalize the system in the Elantra more than the Civics by setting things like my favorite presets. I will say though, there needs to be a special shout out to both manufacturers for having actual physical climate controls. There are dials and buttons in both cars for all the system, and it's what every car should have. It may look old to some people, but it's so much more functional and safer to have physical climate control buttons. Okay, I'm done ranting. In terms of comfort, well, the Civic is the easy winner. Although the Elantra has a very comfortable front seat that's supportive and I enjoy being here, it lacks a bit of headroom found in the Civic, and well, those Civic seats are even more comfortable. They're squishier, yet somehow more supportive, and just a great place to spend a lot of time in. Stepping back to the rear seats, well, it's a case of numbers can be deceiving. On paper, it looks like the Civic should have the less comfortable rear seat because it offers less headroom and legroom. Well, in real-world testing, it's quite the opposite. We prefer being in the Civic's rear seat more, and we found headroom more lacking in the Elantra, and then there's also the sloping down roof, which blocks outward visibility for rear seat passengers. Both cars do include rear heated seats for outboard passengers, so that's a nice plus on cold wintry days. Continuing further back through the car, the Civic's trunk once again wins as it's larger, more square, and has a better rectangular trunk lid opening. But coming back up front in terms of comfort, the armrests here are nice and squishy. My arms seem to be in the exact place I'd want them to get on the steering wheel, and the steering wheel itself is nice smooth leather. And having this long center bar is actually nice because sometimes I can rest my arm on there when I'm waiting at a stoplight. At an as-tested price of $30,995, including destination charges, the Elantra Hybrid Luxe undercuts the Civic Hybrid Touring by nearly $3,000. So that raises the age-old question of, is the Civic worth the extra money? The powertrain's more robust, the driving experience more refined, comfort has an edge in the Civic, it has better fuel economy, and so on and so on. But a nearly 10% price difference is something that shoppers need to consider.
All right, obviously, cost no object. Yes, the Civic is still the best car in its class. It rides like something from the class above, and even though it is plenty powerful, it's still so fuel efficient.
But the Elantra is a really solid choice as well. Maybe it makes a little less power in the real world and gets a little less fuel economy in the real world, but it also has more features and costs less. It's a great alternative to the Civic.